Across the vast tapestry of human history, global conflicts have etched a profound and often heartrending narrative, driven by the unyielding currents of territorial ambition, ideological zeal, economic rivalry, and the desperate contest for dwindling resources. From the earth-shattering devastation of the two world wars to the protracted, smoldering skirmishes that continue to ignite in corners of the globe, these struggles have redrawn borders, reshaped societies, and left an enduring imprint on the collective conscience of humanity. The Uppsala Conflict Data Program, a meticulous chronicler of such turmoil, documents approximately 150 major armed conflicts since the dawn of the 20th century, each marked by at least 1,000 battle-related deaths in a single year. The cataclysmic peaks of the First and Second World Wars, alongside persistent strife in regions like the Middle East, Africa, and beyond, underscore the staggering toll of these clashes. Yet, within this chronicle of destruction lies a deeper story, a world grappling with the elusive dream of peace, forever challenged by the complexities of power, pride, and survival in an intricately interconnected age. In the vast chronicle of human history, war has cast a long and unyielding shadow, its patterns woven into the rise and fall of civilizations. The concept of the 5 stages of war, tension, escalation, confrontation, climax, and resolution, offers a stark lens to unravel the life cycle of conflict, revealing a predictable yet often inescapable arc that has shaped the fate of nations. Rooted in the study of conflicts from ancient empires to modern geopolitics, this framework traces the journey from the first sparks of discord to cataclysmic violence and its fragile aftermath, exposing the deep-seated forces that propel societies toward destruction. It begins with tension, where grievances over territory, ideology, or resources simmer beneath the surface, much like the pre-World War I rivalries among European powers, whose imperial ambitions and mistrust formed a powder keg waiting to ignite. This initial phase is a critical juncture, a moment when diplomacy might quell the rising discord, yet history reveals how rarely such opportunities are seized, as fear or pride often overshadows reason, nudging societies toward escalation. As tensions simmer unchecked, escalation takes hold, transforming latent disputes into tangible preparations for conflict, with nations mobilizing resources, forging alliances, or engaging in provocative posturing, as seen in the Cold War's arms race, where the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of catastrophe. This growing momentum, fueled by the fear of appearing weak or losing ground, locks parties into a path that feels increasingly irreversible, pulling them inexorably toward confrontation. When diplomacy collapses, confrontation erupts, unleashing the full force of open hostilities, with battles, invasions, or insurgencies consuming lives and fracturing societies, as witnessed in the trench warfare of World War I or the 2003 US invasion of Iraq. Here, the raw destructiveness of war drowns out reason, its machinery consuming all restraint and cementing a sense of inevitability as societies plunge deeper into the abyss. This turmoil builds toward the climax, the conflict's tipping point, where decisive battles or strategic shifts, like Stalingrad in 1942-43, alter the course of history, yet the pursuit of this pivotal moment, driven by the seductive lure of victory, often blinds leaders to the mounting costs, prolonging suffering as the promise of dominance overshadows all else. Yet, even the fiercest conflicts must eventually subside, giving way to resolution, an uneasy close through victory, stalemate, or negotiated peace, as with the 1919 Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I but sowed seeds for future strife, its fragility lying in the failure to fully address the root causes of tension, leaving embers that can reignite, as seen in the cyclical violence of the Middle East. These 5 stages, woven together by human nature's complex interplay of ambition, fear, and miscalculation, map a relentless progression that recurs across time, from the rivalries of the Peloponnesian War to the ongoing struggle in Ukraine, revealing a hauntingly similar path despite varied triggers. This framework, both a mirror and a warning, lays bare a grim truth. Without deliberate, courageous efforts to disrupt this cycle at its earliest stirrings, humanity's propensity for war remains a powerful, almost inexorable force, poised to repeat its tragic cadence across generations, forever challenging the fragile hope of lasting peace. War, a persistent shadow over human history, is often framed as an avoidable tragedy, a failure of reason that could be circumvented with better diplomacy or foresight. Yet, this belief oversimplifies the intricate forces that drive conflict, ignoring the deep-rooted complexities revealed by the 5 stages of war: tension, escalation, confrontation, climax, and resolution. Common misconceptions about war's avoidability paint it as a mere lapse in judgment, soluble through dialogue or goodwill, But this view underestimates the structural, psychological, and societal dynamics that make conflict feel almost inevitable. Understanding the true nature of conflict presents a formidable challenge, as it requires grappling with humanity's capacity for mistrust, the momentum of escalation, and the cyclical failures of resolution, all of which perpetuate war's tragic rhythm. One prevalent misconception is that wars can always be prevented through diplomacy alone. While diplomacy has averted crises, such as the resolution of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, it often falters when tensions, the first stage of war, are rooted in irreconcilable interests, like territorial claims or ideological divides. For instance, the pre-World War I alliances were so entrenched that diplomatic efforts crumbled under mutual distrust, showing how deeply embedded grievances resist simple negotiation. Another misconception is that wars stem solely from irrational aggression, ignoring how rational calculations, such as securing resources or deterring rivals, can drive escalation, as seen in the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, justified by strategic interests but spiraling into prolonged conflict. Additionally, many believe that once war begins, it can be easily halted, yet the confrontation stage, with its emotional and material sunk costs, often locks parties into a cycle where retreat feels like betrayal, as evidenced by the grueling stalemates of World War I's trenches. The challenge of understanding conflict's nature lies in recognizing its multifaceted drivers, beyond mere miscommunication or malice. Human nature's blend of fear, pride, and ambition fuels tension, while societal structures, like economic inequality or nationalistic fervor, amplify escalation. The Peloponnesian War, driven by Athens and Sparta's competing visions of power, mirrors modern conflicts like the Russia-Ukraine struggle, where geopolitical ambitions defy simple solutions. Moreover, the resolution stage often fails to address root causes, as seen in the 1919 Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I but planted seeds for World War II by fostering resentment. This cyclical nature complicates prevention, as each war's end can ignite the next cycle's tensions. Grappling with this requires acknowledging that conflict is not just a failure of systems but a reflection of enduring human and structural realities, making the hope of universal peace a noble yet elusive pursuit against the relentless tide of history's patterns. The First World War, a cataclysm that reshaped the 20th century, serves as a powerful example of a conflict unfolding through the 5 stages of war: tension, escalation, confrontation, climax, and resolution, revealing the inexorable forces that drive nations to destruction. This global conflict, sparked by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914, illustrates how simmering rivalries, fueled by ambition and mistrust, cascaded into a war that claimed over 16 million lives. By tracing its progression through these stages, we see how the escalation phase, marked by rigid alliances and militarized posturing, became the critical turning point where war became all but inevitable, locking Europe into a tragic collision course. The tension stage began decades before 1914, as European powers vied for imperial dominance and economic supremacy. The late 19th century saw Germany's rapid industrialization challenge Britain's global hegemony, while France harbored resentment over its 1871 loss of Alsace-Lorraine to Germany. Meanwhile, the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires grappled with internal ethnic strife, and Russia sought to expand its influence in the Balkans. These simmering rivalries, compounded by nationalistic fervor and colonial competition, created a powder keg, with the Balkans, nicknamed Europe's tinderbox, as a focal point of instability. Diplomacy, such as the Congress of Berlin in 1878, offered temporary relief, but mutual distrust festered, setting the stage for escalation. Escalation emerged as the pivotal turning point, where war's inevitability crystallized. By the early 20th century, Europe's powers had formed rigid alliances: the Triple Entente, France, Russia, Britain, and the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy, creating a web of obligations that turned local disputes into potential continental crises. The 1905 and 1911 Moroccan crises and the Balkan Wars of 1912-13 heightened tensions, as nations tested each other's resolve. Military build-ups accelerated, with Germany's naval race against Britain and conscription swelling armies across the continent. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand on June 28, 1914, by a Serbian nationalist was the spark, but the escalation phase had already primed the conflict. Austria-Hungary's ultimatum to Serbia, backed by Germany's blank check assurance, and Russia's mobilization in support of Serbia triggered a domino effect. By late July 1914, the inflexible alliance system and preemptive military plans, like Germany's Schlieffen Plan, made de-escalation nearly impossible. This moment, when diplomatic flexibility succumbed to militarized commitments, marked the point of no return, as nations, bound by honor and strategy, hurtled toward war. Confrontation erupted in August 1914, as Germany declared war on Russia and France, invading Belgium and prompting Britain's entry. The war's early months saw brutal campaigns, from the Battle of the Frontiers to the Race to the Sea, as millions were mobilized into trench warfare's grinding stalemate. The human and material toll mounted, with battles like Tannenberg and the Marne showcasing the ferocity of industrialized warfare. This phase, defined by unrelenting violence, consumed any lingering hopes of a swift resolution, as the sunk costs of lives and resources entrenched each side's resolve. The climax arrived in 1916–17, with battles like Verdun and the Somme epitomizing the war's horrific peak. Verdun, a German attempt to bleed France white, and the Somme, a costly Allied offensive, each saw over 1 million casualties, yet neither decisively shifted the stalemate. The entry of the United States in 1917, prompted by Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare, marked a strategic turning point, tipping the balance toward the Allies. These moments, while pivotal, were less about inevitability than the escalation phase, as they reflected the war's entrenched momentum rather than its genesis. Resolution came with the armistice of November 11, 1918, following Germany's exhaustion and the Allies' final offensives. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 formalized peace but imposed harsh terms on Germany, sowing resentment that fueled World War II. This fragile resolution, failing to address the underlying tensions of nationalism and economic rivalry, underscored the cyclical nature of conflict, as the embers of one war kindled the next. World War I's trajectory through the 5 stages reveals how escalation, with its rigid alliances and militarized brinkmanship, was the turning point where war became inevitable. By July 1914, the web of commitments and preemptive strategies had eroded diplomatic flexibility, transforming a regional crisis into a global catastrophe. This conflict, with its staggering toll, stands as a haunting reminder of how human ambition and mistrust, once escalated beyond reason, can lock nations into a tragic and seemingly unstoppable march to war. As history's shadow looms, the 5 stages of war reveal conflict's grim cycle: tension, where rivalries simmer; escalation, where alliances and arms lock nations into strife; confrontation, unleashing violence; climax, with decisive battles; and resolution, a fragile pause often sowing future discord. This timeless pattern, etched in countless tragedies, underscores war's persistent pull. We must act swiftly, embracing diplomacy to douse tensions before they flare, breaking the cycle to forge a lasting peace. I hope you enjoyed this walk through the 5 stages of war as much as I did. Make sure to like the video, and subscribe for more videos like this. Until next time, stay curious.